Give me a small amount of your time and I will tell you why Star Wars The Last Jedi is not only the worst Star Wars movie, the one that ruined the entire Star Wars franchise, but it's also the definitive
worst movie ever!
If you watch any of the many videos on the channel by now, if you haven't, you should. There's a lot of content there, it's pretty good. If you've been on the channel before, you know I don't particularly like Star Wars The Last Jedi. I've mentioned it a few times. In particular, I'm not fond of one Rian Johnson, as seen in this video about Looper. For those of you who don't know who Rian Johnson is, he's the man who made Looper, a movie that doesn't make sense, as seen in that video I pointed to earlier. He also directed, more importantly for this video, Star Wars The Last Jedi. Now, for some reason, some people like this movie. Those people are idiots. If you've been following along, I've been building up to this video because I started a YouTube series called Worst Movie Ever. This is the 10th installment of it. We've been building up to this one because this movie is definitively the worst movie ever. Let me explain. We've got to start at the very beginning. We're going to take it step by step, go through the movie, pointing out the things that don't make sense, shocker for a Rian Johnson film, and then ultimately put my case forward as to why this is the worst movie ever. If you want to disagree with me all the way through, just let me know in the comments. So, where better to begin than the beginning? Of course. The opening scene in Star Wars The Last Jedi is when the Resistance are escaping their base and the bad guys are hunting them down. They appear, Poe's ship comes in, and Poe alone stares off against the bad guys, leading to the moment right off the bat where we all knew this was going to be a terrible movie. The moment I'm speaking of is the prank phone call. The prank phone call, which was hilariously bad. It wasn't funny, and it wasn't just bad, it was hilariously bad. On the same level of the likes of a Sharknado. People liked that movie because of how bad it was. And I guess they were trying to do similar to what they did with Han Solo in the originals. Obviously we've got this scene from the original.
Everything's under control, situation normal.
What happened?
Had a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine, we're all fine here now, thank you. How are you?
We're sending a squad up.
Negative. We have a reactor leak here now. Give us a few minutes to lock it down. Large leak, very dangerous.
Who is this? What's your operating number?
But the prank phone call is nothing like this scene when Han is, you know, off the cuff. They're trying way too hard, and what doesn't help this scene is that Donald Gleason, a fellow Irishman, is actually horrendous in this movie. He's such a tryhard, too much of a tryhard, and Donald Gleason, in stuff I've seen before, he's a pretty good actor. If you watch the likes of About Time, fantastic. In Star Wars The Last Jedi, and a little bit in The Force Awakens, but more so in The Last Jedi, he's just trying to be like a cartoon character, and I don't know why. He, more so than anyone else in this movie, is just too over the top. This prank phone call, I don't think even children would have found it funny in the Star Wars universe. I don't know. There's surely a better way they could have had for Poe to take up their time. Poe's there and he takes out all the guns so that the bigger ships can come in and drop the bombs. And yes, I said drop the bombs because, you know, it's a Rian Johnson film. It doesn't have to make sense like all those other ones. So the ship flies in very slowly. All the other ships are blown away. One ship left, which flies in on top of the Dreadnought, which we haven't seen before in Star Wars up to this point. At least not in the main movies. So the ship flies in, the door opens, the pilot has to try to get the bombs out. I'm paraphrasing here a lot, but the door opens. And in previous Star Wars films, and even in The Last Jedi later on in it, any door that opens, there's a force shield on it. You see the two lights on either side, and there's like a see-through wall or see-through shield for things to go through. Because although I'm not a scientist, I've been led to believe that space is a vacuum. If the window breaks, stuff's gonna go flying out the window. So surely if a door opens, stuff's gonna go flying out that door. So surely all those bombs would instantly get sucked out, but so would all the people, so would all the air, or even if they had, you know, air generators or oxygen generators, surely that would all get sucked out when that door is open. So anyone in that area would just suffocate, wouldn't be able to press the button, wouldn't be able to reach out and grab for the remote as it was falling. And then you've also got the thing that the bombs fall into space. Yeah, the bombs fall in space. Now, I have seen that Star Wars have come out with the reasoning for this. They've said it's electromagnetic propulsion, electromagnetically driven to the targets, which seems like bullshit just to cover your tracks because you didn't realize at the time that you know, stuff doesn't fall in space. Well, as I say, it's a Rian Johnson film. It's never going to make sense. So that's the opening. They're the stupid things from the beginning. The no force shielding. You should die. All the things you just get sucked out of the plane. The bombs shouldn't work, but they've made up an excuse for it. You got the terrible phone call, and already we're off to a terrible start with Star Wars The Last Jedi. Go pretty fast. Faster than usual. Mainly because there was a lot to get through. And then we get to the moment which pissed off a lot of Star Wars fans. Even though The Force Awakens wasn't a great movie, they did seem to set up well at the end of it for the next movie. At least that's what we thought. Rey is handing over the lightsaber to Luke when you think, okay, here we go. Luke's going to get back into action, and technically he does, but then also he kind of makes a balls of it. We get to the moment, Rey hands over the lightsaber, and Rian Johnson just decides, I'm going to make this movie all about me. Fuck you, J.J. Abrams. And Mark Hamill throws the lightsaber over his shoulder. Now, do you remember a few years ago when Family Guy made their Star Wars films? Where they basically took the piss. They did spoof versions of everything, and they basically just made jokes at Star Wars expense. I don't think Family Guy will be able to do that with The Last Jedi, because The Last Jedi already make those stupid jokes themselves, except not as funny as Family Guy would have done. Family Guy are going to do a piss take version of The Last Jedi. They'll just have to play it straight and actually do a movie that makes sense. Instead of throwing away the lightsaber, Luke will take up the lightsaber and go the way he was supposed to go with it. But throwing away the lightsaber, later on having Luke refer to it as a laser sword, that's just such disrespect to the franchise, to the fans, to the actors, to everybody who's ever worked on Star Wars, to the lore of Star Wars. Instantly shows the lack of respect that Rian Johnson had for the job he was given. A job that many Star Wars fans the world over would have given a right arm, a right leg, half their body to even be able to do for 5 minutes. How many people have dreamed of making a Star Wars movie? This is a franchise which inspired so many people to become filmmakers or stunt choreographers, special effects people, or even actors. And this guy just instantly pisses all over the series. Then we have the whole thing that they started to build up in The Force Awakens. They continue in The Last Jedi when we see Snoke as a projection, as a giant projection. And I was fully expecting that when we finally saw Snoke, yeah, this is a personal thing, it's not really important, but what I fully expected when we saw Snoke, he was going to be tiny or huge, but more than likely tiny, and the whole reason for him to be a giant hologram is that he has a Napoleon complex, which would have made sense for a bad guy. But it was kind of an anticlimax to have him as these giant projections all the way through Force Awakens, and for one at the start of Last Jedi, ultimately he's just a normal sized guy with a weird face. And then of course we have the problem that they've had since The Force Awakens, that their main bad guy in Kylo Ren is the worst bad guy Star Wars has ever seen. And I don't mean worst in terms of the most evil or the most badass. He's just terrible. You know, he's a Darth Vader wannabe. He's a whiny little fanboy. And even Snoke refers to him as a child in a mask, which leads to Kylo Ren having a tantrum in an elevator and ultimately destroying his mask. A mask that was clearly put in the film initially to sell action figures, Halloween costumes, that sort of thing. Then of course Rey is following Luke, and Luke drinks the blue milk straight out of the tit of the creature thing. What the hell was that all about? That was the most uncomfortable scene I've ever watched in a cinema. Then we later on find out that the bad guys can track the resistance through light speed. A new development. I'm always forcing new things in Star Wars. In every Star Wars film we should see stuff we haven't seen before. Something that they massively failed with in The Force Awakens, and you have to give them credit points for. With The Last Jedi, they at least tried some new things, and they did a better overall version of making it feel like a Star Wars film. So once the resistance have been tracked through light speed, so begins worst car chase or slow speed chase. We get to the scene where Kylo Ren's out in his ship and he's about to shoot the bridge where Leia is. And obviously they have this moment where they can sense each other, and ultimately he does what he should do. He takes the shot. The reason he should do this is because if Kylo Ren was responsible for the death of Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Luke Skywalker, that instantly gives him villain credibility. It instantly makes him super evil in the eye of hardcore Star Wars fans, surely. Because if he's killing off all the major characters, everybody's going to hate him for all the right reasons. Not just hate him because he's a bad guy, or a poor bad guy, I should say. If he kills off beloved characters, he instantly becomes a really good villain. If he shows no remorse all the way through. Maybe I should have stated it already. I probably should have stated this at the beginning. Star Wars The Last Jedi was so bad that I still, right now, at the time of recording, August 2020, still have not watched Rise of Skywalker. Now I know some of the stuff I talk about might be resolved in the film. I've heard the film is still terrible. I haven't watched it because Star Wars The Last Jedi ruined it. There's no point in even continuing the franchise. There's no recovery. There was no way to redeem this series. They've gone 2 films so far. The first one was meh, the second one was goddamn awful. After Kylo Ren takes the shot and Leia is now out in space, we get another of the worst moments in Star Wars history. A moment so stupid that it's beyond belief it actually made it into the final film. This is the Super Leia scene. Now, there's multiple problems here. Obviously, before this film came out, unfortunately, Carrie Fisher passed away. When I was watching it in the cinema, I thought they had done something amazing. I thought they'd had it when she was out in space and they were slowly zooming in on her face. They were just going to have this poignant moment where we all see her character killed off and they give her a proper goodbye in the series. Maybe give her a funeral at the end of the film, as they have done with other characters. But to see her out in space, reaching her hand out, close up on her face, cut back to the ship. That's all they had to do. But then I started to realize, wait, they're still zooming in here. They're still oh, her finger moved. Oh wait, they're moving in. Her eye opened. Okay, maybe she's just gonna float away with her eye open. No, Superman. In the past, we've seen various force powers. The force seems to have certain power, certain limitations. There's force lightning, force push, things like that. They never established that there was a force flying through fucking space. And it gets even more ridiculous then, because Leia floats over to the ship. She floats over to the area that's just been blown away. Everyone comes running up to this emergency door, to the airlock, and they open the door. They open the door to space to let Leia in. Rather than letting Leia in, they would have all been sucked out. Again, not surprisingly, in a Rian Johnson film, it doesn't make sense. And up to this point, Rey's been trying to convince Luke to join the fight, to help train her and ultimately join the Resistance and help them spark the fight back. And Luke has been hesitant to this point. He hasn't been agreeing. Surely, if Luke senses Leia being killed, if Leia had been left out in space, she'd been killed off, surely that could have been the moment, the catalyst that brought Luke back. Even if he can't feel the Force, he could have sensed that spark. And that could have been the moment that ignited him into action, made him the star of the film again. Because they've already established well before in the previous films the connection between Luke and Leia and how they sense each other all the time, even when they're at their lowest. So if they had that moment, obviously they have the moment later on where they say each other's name, it's kind of weird. But if Luke sensed her death and that was the moment, that was the catalyst that drove him back into the Resistance, that would have made a lot more sense, in my opinion. So now Leia is incapacitated in the movie because, you know, she's not dead. They got her back in the ship and she's in a space coma. All the leaders, including Admiral Akbar, are out of commission. There's no leaders. So out of nowhere, they decide midway through a three-part trilogy, midway through a trilogy, out of nowhere, introduce an authority figure. In comes purple-haired lady. Someone who, in the main films at least, we have never seen. Don't know who she is. We haven't seen her have any interactions with anybody. We don't know what's going on with this. Why didn't they just put Poe in charge? It would have made more sense. So purple-haired lady is now in charge for some reason. It seems really lazy writing to just introduce an authority figure this late into the film. Then in the film we see Rey and Kylo Ren having a connection, having a force connection. This is pretty cool because I've made reference on the channel before, one of my favourite games of all time, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And yeah, it's not technically canon, but in that there's a force connection between two people, and I believe this is the first time we see a force connection between two characters in the main films. Could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. I might be right. I'm pretty sure I'm right. So seeing the force connection was cool, but I don't understand why there were so many close-ups. It was just a close-up of Rey, close-up of Kylo Ren, close-up of Rey, close-up of Kylo Ren, and later on they show them reaching across to touch hands. But for the most part, it's just extreme close-ups. The force connection is also leads to the point where Rey shoots while she's in her hut, knocks all the rocks out, she goes outside, and for the first time we see the island caretakers, who are basically Muppets. Muppet nuns. I don't know why. Okay, they didn't want to use CGI creatures, but that creature creation was pretty poor. Not long after, Luke finally agrees to train Rey, which ultimately leads to another terrible scene in The Last Jedi. Massively disrespects the franchise, the film, fans, all of it. So we get to the point where Luke brings Rey to the rock that Luke sits on at the end of the film when he's meditating. He asks Rey, what do you know about the Force? And ultimately she says, makes things float. I think that's the perfect analogy for how Rian Johnson viewed Star Wars. He didn't know anything about it, he didn't particularly care about it, he saw the basics, he saw stuff float, and he's like, yeah, I can do special effects, I'll take the paycheck for this one. And that's all this was to him. He clearly didn't give a shit about the overall story, or the fans, or the franchise, or any of that, or the actors, or the people that worked on it. I don't know. Lucas showing Rey how to use the Force. He tells her to reach out, and he tickles her hand with a leaf. She's like, oh, I feel it. It wouldn't even be seen in a kid's TV show as a joke, because it wasn't funny, but they clearly tried way too hard to be funny. So many of the jokes in this are so poor, so badly written. I can't say they're badly acted, because I think the actors were just working with what they were given. You know, I don't see how any actor could have made this scene any better. It was just such a stupid, belittling joke. Belittling of Rey, making her seem really stupid. Belittling of the Force itself. Belittling of Star Wars in itself. Have such terrible comedy in it unnecessarily. And we've even had Jar Jar Binks in the past, so you know, we've no terrible comedy. Moving on, Finn and Rose are going off to the casino planet. They're looking for the master code breaker. And it's around 52 minutes into the film, and Finn says to Rose, the fleet only has 18 hours of fuel left. For some reason, people have picked up on the fact of it's been one of the only times they've mentioned fuel in Star Wars. That's not the point I'm focusing on here. It's the 18 hours. Why are they using Earth-based time in a galaxy far, far away? You may notice when you watch the original 6 films, they deliberately don't mention time as much as possible, at least. Especially the original 3, the good ones. Why is Hans Kessel Run measured in parsecs? Now I know parsecs technically aren't a measurement of time, but it was clearly used instead of the likes of minutes and seconds because it sounded sci-fi at the time. Using Earth-based time doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, I'm not a specialist in space-time. I know that days last longer on different planets. Whether hours last longer on different planets is another thing altogether. Imagine if Finn had said to Rose, they've got 2 days of fuel left. What are those Earth days, Mars days, Tatooine days? How long is that measurement of time in the scale of Star Wars? Now, I haven't looked up, you know, the canon for it. Maybe there is galactic standard time. I know when it comes to the languages, they don't speak English in Star Wars, they speak galactic basic. So maybe there's some reference there that I've just completely missed. And if there is, let me know. But if there isn't, it's a really stupid thing to put in the movie. A stupid thing that they refer back to later on. So once again, they shoot back to Rey, who's training, and Rey is fighting a rock. Not the rock, a rock. Ultimately, she uses a lightsaber and she's swinging it around. She breaks the rock falls down a cliff and does this. That was hilarious, wasn't it? So Finn and Rose get to the casino planet, and as they're landing, we get the most forced cameo ever. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character in a frame talking to police. Just wedged in as they also showed a wide shot of Finn and Rose's ship on the beach. Upon further research, I also found out that Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character was called Slow and Low. Slow and Low. Creative. Still got a long way to go, but I think you're starting to get the picture of The Last Jedi. It's pretty shit.